Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and this is my first impressions look on the Reebok Angel Reese 1. So of course this is Angel Reese's first signature shoe with Reebok, and actually it doesn't look too bad, you know what I mean? I think it looks pretty good, you know, the overall design, I don't think it looks terrible. It's not my favorite, but it actually looks pretty good, and also this color is really nice, you know, as far as the overall upper goes, we have this kind of like iridescent glow, holographic glow to it, so when you shine the light in different angles, it gives you like kind of like a shiny color, you know? So yeah, this shoe retails for 120 bucks, which I think is a pretty good price for like a first signature shoe. So if you guys do want to cop, try to leave in the link in the description box, but let's get it started right off with the Tracciones. In this color, we have a solid rubber outsole with some pretty interesting designs. So going throughout this kind of like light gray part of the outsole, we have like a curved shape, right? And it almost kind of makes like an A, you know? And as far as the grooves go, the grooves are pretty thin and soft in that area. So it doesn't seem like it'll be super durable. And then here for the black parts, here in the forefoot, we have like a pretty interesting pattern as well. It just kind of looks like a random like spot design, you know what I mean? So yeah, how does the traction feel so far? It doesn't feel too good. Like just trying it on my wood floors, the bite isn't too good, which kind of sucks. Hopefully, you know, once I break it in, the traction keeps getting better and better, but right now, for my first impressions, the bite's just not that good, you know? They also are saying it's high abrasion resistant, so I don't know. As far as like the durability goes, however, here where the highway area is, like where this black part, and also here in the heel, you do have like well, I guess especially here where the ball of your foot is, you have that kind of like rougher, thicker pattern, right? So you should be fine here in the highway area. However, in the light gray parts of the outsole, the rubber is thin and a little bit softer there. So I don't think it's going to be the best for outdoor use. It doesn't seem like it'll be great for durability. And also in terms of dust performance, it feels like it'll be okay as well. It seemed to be picking up a little bit of dust. But for the most part, like even when I first got it, it didn't really have a good bite. So the bite didn't seem to change all too much just on my wood floors after picking up like dog hair and dust and stuff like that. So I guess maybe it might have pretty good dust performance, but again, the bite itself just doesn't seem that good so far. And also, this shoe has no squeak. Of course, squeak has nothing to do with performance, but if you like to have a nice squeak, this shoe is extremely silent. So the traction so far seems like a little bit of a disappointment. And now moving on to the heel to toe transition, overall it feels pretty nice, right? So here in the heel, we do have a nice curved shape, right? So that feels good. However, the entire midsole is pretty caged, right? And the cage that they're using is a little bit on the softer side of things. It's not like a super stiff plastic, but also it's not like super soft either, you know? For example, in like the Wild 10s or something like that, the Liren 5 V2, the cage there is really, really soft, right? This one's thicker and a good amount stiffer, but it's not like a really stiff, like hard plastic, you know? So it still allows for a little bit of heel compression, and it feels kind of smooth still here in the heel. And then coming here into the forefoot, we do have a nice curve shape. So that feels nice, right? And then here in the forefoot, we do have a nice bit of flexibility. It is able to bend here in the forefoot, which does feel nice. However, it's like not super easy. Like I can't even bend it with one finger, you know? So it has a stiffer feel, but is able to flex. So that feels nice. And it has a pretty nice kind of like springy, almost explosive feel, which does feel great as well. So overall heel to toe transition, overall shape is nice. Heel is kind of smooth and has a kind of like stiffer, a little bit more springy feel here in the forefoot, which I do like, right? So there's that. Moving on to the cushioning setup. So the cushioning setup really surprised me, right? It actually feels pretty dang nice. So they are using what they're calling the energy return system. So it says ERS in like multiple areas of the shoe. It says ERS right over here on top of the tongue. It says ERS here in the bottom of the shoe as well. So it does have a cutout here in the heel and forefoot for the actual foam so that you can see it. And it also says that the ERS tech is using strategically placed pods of nitrogen infused super float foam. So I'm guessing like we have a pod here in the forefoot as well as here in the heel. Either way, it feels really comfortable, right? However, the core feel is pretty dang bad, right? So I tried it compared to the Jog 3, and the Jog 3 is okay. It has like average court feel, maybe slightly above average, you know what I mean? And it's even higher than the Jaw 3, right? So the court feel is definitely not good. You feel pretty high up off the ground. However, you do get pretty good cushion, and the underfoot cushion feels kind of similar to the Jaw 3 as well. You know what I mean? I would say the Jaw 3 is a little bit softer. You know, it is broken in, right? So it's broken in and it's a little bit softer for the underfoot cushion while still having better core feel here in the Jaw 3. However, here in the Angel Reese 1, you still have a pretty soft feel, and it actually feels a little bit bouncy as well, right? So as far as the insole goes, the insole is okay, you know what I mean? It's not like a super foamy, like super soft insole, but it is kind of thick, you know? So it's kind of weird because like when I saw it, I was like, oh, it's thick and it looks like it'll be nice. But then when I felt it, I was like, oh, it's actually kind of not nice. You know what I mean? It's not like super soft, you know? But then underneath the insole, we do have a regular strobo board, and it is pretty glued down, right? Even when I'm pressing with my finger, it does have a kind of like stiffer feel. But then for some reason, maybe it's because the foam is thick, you know, because the core feel isn't good. I can feel a nice bit of compression in the heel, and it has a nice compression, and it seems like a nice kind of elasticity and kind of like rebound back, you know? Like nice bounce. And then also in the forefoot, it's a little bit more dead and a little bit stiffer, but it's still kind of nice. So the underfoot cushion, pretty nice. The straight up step and comfort, right, is, I would say, also pretty nice. And I am normal, like average weight. So right when I put on the shoe, it's still kind of soft and kind of nice. Obviously not as soft as like a soft mesh strobo board or a shoe that's using like a drop in midsole where your foot is right on top of the foam, but it's still soft for the step and comfort. And then the underfoot cushion, kind of like when I started walking and kind of like when I was like jumping around, it did get softer and a little bit bouncier, right? Also here in the heel, there is a tiny bit of heel compression, which did surprise me. You know, it does have a little bit of compression, probably because the actual foam is on the softer side of things, and also the foam is kind of thick, right? Even though you do have a nice bit of cage. So the overall cushioning setup, I actually do like. However, the only thing I don't like is the court feel, right? So I guess Angel Reese just wanted like maximum cushion, maximum comfort and impact protection, and didn't really care about how low to the ground you are, which is fine. So there is a cushioning setup there. And now moving on to the upper. So the upper, they are using kind of like this caged material, right? And they're saying it's a molded TPU. And then underneath that, we have ventilated mesh panels, like with the cutouts. You can see the actual mesh, and it's extremely thin. So if you look in the midfoot and kind of look underneath the material, you can almost kind of like see through the ventilated mesh. So the mesh material is extremely thin, although it's not like a super large surface area of mesh, because obviously you do have the molded kind of like TPU or plastic material over that. But even still, the plastic material, the molded material, isn't that thick. And it's also not super stiff at all. Like, look at this. It's super duper soft. It gives pretty easily as well. So overall, I like how it feels on foot. Like, it doesn't pinch at all. It's not stiff at all. It's soft, it's comfortable, but while still having a good amount of support, you know? However, it doesn't feel super minimal though. You know what I mean? It does feel minimal though. I'm not saying it's bulky or thick at all, but it doesn't feel super minimal comparing it to shoes that have a really thin material, especially comparing to like modern basketball shoes, you know, like the Sabrina 3, the Liren 5 V2, you know what I mean? The Jaw 2, where they're just like really thin, like kind of like almost single layer materials. This is dual layered and it's a little bit thicker, but still like really soft, conforms to my foot, you know? So there's that. And then here in the midfoot, it gets a little bit stiffer. It feels a little bit more glued down, but still like pretty soft. And then on the bottom of the tongue, we also have a very well ventilated mesh, right? So the overall kind of like airflow feels pretty good right here. Also through the mesh panel cutouts, there seems to be a little bit of ventilation there as well. And then for this colorway, we do have this kind, it looks kind of like a pearl. It goes through the eyelets, which is pretty cool. And then for the tongue, we just have like an average amount of padding, you know what I mean? It's not like super well padded, which kind of sucks. You do have a very large tongue though. Look at this. It's a very, very large tongue, but not super well padded, but it's not super minimal either. It's just like average. And then it's also a half booty construction tongue, giving you a better overall one-to-one fit. And then here in the ankle area, we actually have very minimal padding. And it's actually, it looks like Achilles pads, but it's actually not, because they didn't add any type of like foam, like extra foam, you know what I mean? They just had the actual kind of like material here with the foam, and then they stitched it, you know what I mean? So it's not an actual Achilles pad. It's not super nice either. So that kind of sucks, because when I saw it, I was like, oh, and then I saw it again like a little bit closer, and I was like, nah, it's not that nice, right? So overall, it's also not super well padded. Like even on the sides and also in the back of the shoe, not super well padded. So overall, it just has like the upper has like a softer kind of like more minimal feel, you know what I mean, while still having a pretty good supportive feel. So yeah, there is the upper there. And now moving on to the fit. So I went up half a size, and this shoe fits me a little bit long and also pretty dang roomy here in the toe box. So yeah, I would suggest just going true to size. If you are looking to get the shoe and you want a pretty snug fit, you know, especially lengthwise, then you should be fine going true to size, because again, I went up half a size, it's a little bit long and also pretty dang roomy here in the toe box for me. I don't know what it is, but look at it. It does scrunch up a good amount, and there's just a lot of dead space here for me, which I'm not a huge fan of. Widthwise also is like around normal to like a slightly wide. You know, it has a pretty wide fit for me, and I do have a good amount of space like where my pinky toe is. You know, I can wiggle my pinky toe a little bit, so yeah, the fit just isn't great for me, which is kind of weird. You know what I mean? Angel Reese, I guess she maybe has like a thick, wide foot. I don't know. But yeah, the fit just isn't great for me. And hopefully it's not terrible for lockdown, especially here in the forefoot, but I don't think it's going to be great for me. You know what I mean? So again, you should probably just go true to size with the shoe, right? So there's that. Moving on to the support in lockdown, it feels like it'll be overall pretty good. Like, it doesn't seem overly supportive and stiff though, you know what I mean? Like, I'm playing in the AE2s right now. The AE2s are so freaking stiff and supportive, and like, almost overly like too much for me, you know what I mean? Where I don't really like it too much, you know? So, and also I got the LeBron 23, and those are pretty stiff as well. So this definitely is not on par with those, which I think is a good thing, because I think those are a little bit stiffer, and or maybe a little bit stiffer than I would like. I feel like this, especially the upper, is just good enough for me. It's adequate, right? It's still, or maybe a little bit better than just adequate, right? So for lateral containment, it feels like it'll be pretty good, and the overall upper does feel supportive enough, especially here in the forefoot. We do have a little bit of the rubber coming up, acting as a side one. Also, we do have the Reebok logo there. And then here in the midfoot, the actual foam comes up, you know what I mean? So that acts as a sidewall just a tiny bit, and there is an internal TPU heel counter. So a lateral containment feels like it's gonna be good. And also overall torsion support is pretty good as well. It's like a pretty stiff feel underfoot too, right? And also lateral stability feels okay. I mean, it's not a super wide shoe, however, so we'll have to see on lateral stability. It doesn't feel like it's gonna be like a terrible issue, but it's just add a little outrigger, guys. Like, if you're gonna design a basketball shoe, you need to have a wide base, you know what I mean? You don't want to feel like you're gonna be wobbling around, you know, you don't want to feel unstable. So I wish all shoes just would have that, but it seems like the Angel Reese one doesn't really do that as much, you know? So that does worry me a little bit. And also the heel lockdown doesn't seem amazing either, right? This shoe is a little bit on the stiffer side of things. I mean, again, it's not like super stiff or anything, but it does feel a little bit stiffer than, you know, like your typical Nike hoop shoe, like the Luka 4s or Sabrina 3s, which are extremely flexible. So because of the kind of like stiffer feel, my heel wants to pop out a little bit, and it doesn't feel the greatest for heel lockdown either. So lockdown, I am a little bit worried about, especially also here in the forefoot because of the roomy fit, right? But the overall shoe does feel like supported, right? So there's that. Moving on to the weight of the shoe. Yeah, this shoe feels freaking heavy, guys. Like, it feels heavy. It doesn't feel bulky for the upper, but it feels bulky underneath my foot, and definitely feels pretty bottom heavy, you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm guessing like 14 ounces. Yeah, 14.25 ounces. Let's check the other shoe. 14.75 ounces. So average like 14.5 ounces, right? That's freaking heavy. That is freaking heavy. That's pretty much the exact same weight, or very similar to the AE2, right? So again, it's just a weird kind of like a distribution of weight, because it's just super bottom heavy. You know, the upper, again, doesn't feel like the upper is bulky. There's not a whole lot of weight to the upper. It's just the bottom of the shoe is like heavy, and also the overall shoe is a little bit stiff as well, and the traction doesn't feel too good. You know what I mean? So if all those issues persist and doesn't get better, then I'm probably not gonna like playing in the shoe too much. But yeah, I mean, like, wouldn't you want a little bit lighter shoe? You know what I mean? Like, that's freaking insane for the weight. You know what I mean? So there's that. Moving on to the aesthetics. Again, I do like the overall design. I do like how it kind of reminds you of like a butterfly. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at it from the top, it looks like butterfly wings a little bit. You know, so that looks pretty cool. I do like the ventilated mesh panels as well, with these kind of like curved shapes, you know, in the actual upper. So tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, no, I am not liking the shoe at all. You know what I mean? Like, the cushion, again, it feels nice, but for me, I like to have a lot better core feel, right? The fit doesn't feel great. The lockdown doesn't feel great. You know, the traction doesn't feel great, right? So just for my first impressions, this shoe is not feeling too good. So I am a little bit disappointed in that, but I wasn't expecting too much, you know what I mean? Hopefully, again, that all changes for my performance review. You know, I still need to play in it and break it in. But right now, for my first impressions, not a huge fan of this shoe so far. So anyways, that about concludes my first impressions look on the Angel Reese one. Again, if you guys do want to cop, I'll try to leave in the free link in the description box. But that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.